Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Colony in Space by Malcolm Hulke, directed by Michael E. Brandt in his directorial Doctor Who debut. Actually, I think it was his directorial debut as well. This is the first story to show the third Doctor travel to a different world on an alien planet. And it is also the first story to see Jo Grant travel off-world, and it's this story, this six-part adventure is considered one of the better Third Doctor adventures, and it's very bizarre because there's no monster per se. There's nothing really that stands out apart from the fact that that they go traveling into space, and even still that's mainly just the setup of the story. So in this regard, I consider it Doctor Who's The Winter Soldier. If you look on it on a surface level, the story and its style, particularly the look of this episode, might not be something that would strike out as something that might be interesting. It seems a bit maybe one note in terms of premise. However, like with The Winter Soldier and Colony in Space, something about it just clicks together. So, I digress. To going back into the story, we start off with the Doctor, Jo Grant, and the Brigadier in basically the Doctor's office. Yeah, and the Brigadier is trying to work out where the Master is, but the Doctor's telling him there's no point to even bother because the Master's now got his TARDIS working, so he can go anywhere in time and space, and what's the point of looking for him? So there you go. Then we get a scene on the Doctor's home planet, which is named at the moment, and we see some Time Lords talking about the consequences of the Master's actions on a particular planet. And so they decide to send the Doctor there. And then when we come back to Earth, the Doctor is showing Jo inside the TARDIS in her first scene inside the TARDIS. So she's probably got the longest gap between her first story and her first time in the TARDIS. Apart from, of course, Liz Shaw, who never got to see the inside of the TARDIS. And I really like Katie Manning's performance in this story. It brings back a lot of elements I liked about Ian and Barbara's beginning of adventures, where if you saw all this stuff in real life, you wouldn't really be so cheerful that this thing is bigger on the inside and you're off not on Earth. You would be crapping yourself, basically. You would be absolutely terrified, and you can't process this information. And with this particular Doctor having not been inside the TARDIS and being off-world in a long time, this puts Jo Grant in the eyes of the audience, as we're also seeing these concepts for the first time, basically, in the Third Doctor era. And a lot of fans who got into the show in the Third Doctor era wouldn't know about this stuff. So it is really cool that we are back at the TARDIS elements feeling like something the audience can relate to with our companion. And the Doctor basically lands on this planet, and we get another diplomacy story where we get the Doctor getting involved in a conflict between two groups, and the Doctor's basically trying to sort it out. On one side, you've got the colonists who basically believe Earth at this point in time, which I believe it was 2571, I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. They believe at this point Earth is basically full, and it's like a chicken hen in there. And so these group of people have come to this planet to grow crops and live there. But the crops are not growing for some reason. And then on the other side then, we got this organization called the IMC, who want to mine this planet for its minerals and basically use as much of it as possible for the people of Earth. And they're clearly shown as the sort of villains. They go quickly to murder and trickery. They have a machine with these really silly claws going around, and they've got this machine that makes people believe that they can see a giant lizard. So the IMC are basically the main antagonists of the story. And it's strange because episode 1 sets this off as a master story. Every story so far in this season has been a master story, so there's no real surprise there. But he doesn't actually appear for most of the story. Most of the story is the Doctor dealing with these two organizations, trying to make peace with them, or at least to get the IMC to help with the colonists and stuff, but they want to have it. And we also get these natives to the planets. I believe they call them something like, what do they call them? The primitives or something like that, who can't speak, but somehow they can speak, they can understand any language that's been told to them. And they're basically like, they got sticks and stuff, and they throw sticks. So they're basically like the Indians during the Western Wild West times. And this story is all about capitalism, and basically the big organization is the villain. You got the natives and there's this whole story about living with the natives. So in that regard, it does feel a lot like a Western, and it has a lot of big political messaging in this story. Malcolm Hulke is known for his political messaging. He is a conscious political writer. He writes distinctly to make a political point, and it really shows here. To hide the fact that this is a politically charged story would be nonsense. But it really works here. It keeps you entertained, and as well, this one is probably the more grown-up of the Third Doctor era. It's a bit more straight-faced. There's a lot less cheesy elements until the Master just randomly appears in part 4, I think it was. Basically, they get in Quieter, I think his name is, somebody who is basically like a lawyer to try and organise what's going on between these two organisations. And then it turns out to be the Master. He's just there. And the Doctor and Joe obviously know who he is and that he's a bad guy, but they can't really just call him out because he actually has been here for a little bit and he's taken some identification papers, and so he's legitimised basically. But the Doctor doesn't have any papers, and so the Doctor is basically nobody at this time. And even later on, when the Doctor calls the Master out, because he can see that the Master's got some sort of evil scheme, the Master then calls the Doctor out. It's like, where's your papers? Where's your passport? Basically, and the Doctor says, I don't have it. I'm sorry. So yeah, it's very straightforward, very straight-faced, a bit more grittier than most stories, and it's strange as well that we don't have any unit characters in here. You see the Brigadier at the very start and the very end, but that's about it. So the story really relies on our main cast of Joe and the Doctor, like it was before the Third Doctor era, and later on as well. So it's very nice to see this in a classic format. It seems very cliched, but in a good way. It is a very great, well-written story. You can see by how many great Third Doctor stories there have been, why a lot of people consider the Third Doctor their favourite era of the show. So what is the Master's plan? Well, we find out later on that the Master's trying to get into the city of the Primitives. And when they get there, he explains that there used to be a highly advanced race, and they had a machine called the Doomsday device, which seems to be able to do any sort of destruction. In fact, he threatens the Doctor to destroy the sun so that it'll destroy Earth as well, and just destroy everything. And basically he wants this device to be held at ransom. But the radiation of this device has turned these really highly intelligent beings back into these primitives who can't talk and who are very blind-ish. They have trouble seeing. So, yeah, the last episode, Joe Grant kind of becomes a non-existent character, as it becomes mainly about the Doctor and the Master, and we get some great debates about good and evil, and how the Master's like, we've got this device, we should be able to use it. We should use it to bring the galaxy all together under one roof. And the Doctor's like, I want to explore the universe, not rule it, which is a fantastic line. So yeah, that's a very great epic ending to the story. Now, Jo Grant in this story, for the first half, she is a huge factor into the story, as you know, it is her first outer space adventure, and she befriends another young girl on the colonist, and she's basically learning about different cultures and stuff. So she's really great focus the first half. However, I feel like the story kind of forgets her by the later half of the story, so it is kind of disappointed to see that. So there you go, that's Colony in Space. Fantastic story. Like I said, it's basically like Doctor Who meets The Winter Soldier, where it's a bit more gritted, a bit more grounded. There's no real spectacular superhero bombastic stuff. It's a bit more straightforward, straight-faced, but that's just one of its big strengths. It's something that this story it has a meaning, it has a political messaging, and it keeps you interested with its nice characters and interesting plot. So there you go, that's Colony in Space. So join me next time where we finish up the Master story and season 8 with bloody cults and Satanists. So join me next time where we meet the Daemons. See you next on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.